This release of RSpec introduces a new Synthesized Spectrum feature. When I put a check mark here in this box, this window opens up, showing us a black and white spectrum of the profile. Each time I click on the refresh button, the spectrum that's synthesized is rebuilt from the current graph. If I click on this adjust button, I can manually adjust the contrast of that synthesized spectrum, bringing out finer details. Also, we can check this color checkbox, which gives us a color synthesized spectrum that we can adjust the contrast on too. On faster computers, we can put a check mark here and get a real-time synthesized spectrum in color or in black and white. Now let's shut this down and look at another new feature under Options. In the past, RSpec's default operation was to reopen the spectrum, be it a JPEG or a FITS file or an AVI file, when the program was restarted. You can now turn that default off. Now I've brought up the Windows Explorer here because I'd like to show you a new feature where typically in most programs you can double-click to open any image that's been associated with a program, and you can now do that with RSpec. The trick here is to associate it, and of course if you make an association, that means that this file will always load with that application. I'm going to select Open With and then choose Default Program. Now I'll browse out to the Program Files RSpec folder where RSpec was installed. But instead of selecting the RSpec program itself, select RSpec Open, a small stub program to open your JPEG or AVI or other file. Now when we click OK, we can see that that file 3.jpg was opened. We'll bring back the Windows Explorer one more time just to see that if we double click now on 4.jpg, that JPEG is opened. Now suppose you really don't want to be changing your file associations. You've got them set up with other programs for FITS or JPEG files or bitmaps. Here's another way to preview files very quickly in RSpec. On this screen here, we're currently set up to preview files in that folder. And here's a list of all the files there. When I put a check mark here, RSpec will load each image as I select it. You can see on the left, the spectrum's being loaded, and on the right, the profile is being displayed automatically. So the next morning when you sit down and want to look at just the images from the night before, you can set up a wildcard here and then very easily preview those images right in RSpec, seeing the profile real-time as you click on the file. That's a great feature. Now let's go into the calibration screen for a moment. You'll notice that we don't have any calibration factors here. We've added this new Reload button. When you click on the Reload button, the most previously saved calibration factors are loaded. So make sure you save some here before you reload. Now I'm not going to click Apply because I want to show you another fast way to apply recent calibration factors. Hold the Shift key down on your keyboard and then click on the Calibrate button. You can see we're now calibrated in angstroms as if we clicked on that Reload button. On the Appearance tab, we've added some additional functionality to customize the X-axis labels. By changing the font size here, we can increase the font size on the profile X-axis, and we can also change it from bold to normal. You might use this feature, for example, to prepare the screen before you copy and paste it into a document that you're going to use in a presentation. On the Labels tab on this screen, we've increased the number of labels available from 6 to 12, and we've added this Copy to All button. Clicking on this button will copy the current font, color, and symbol information from the current label to all of the labels in RSpec. This button is also new. It will blank out the text and the wavelength information for all of the buttons. These enhancements will help you manage your labels as you get more and more labels in the system. The CPU window has also been enhanced. It's simplified so only the total usage is shown unless you check this box, and then you can see all of the cores on your chip and what they're doing. There's been some really significant enhancements down here on the video file and live camera tabs. We're just looking at a non-spectroscopic video here. We've added this new button here which will show the number of frames processed per second. This can be very helpful when you're studying your machine's performance, trying to speed it up. We'll come back to this frames per second in just a moment. Now notice our current CPU usage up here is about 15 to 20%. And also notice down here on the right that my angle of rotation I've just changed from 0 to 1. See how the CPU usage went up so much? That's because rotating an image is very expensive computationally, especially a high-resolution image. Now, one way to squeeze more performance out of your computer is to change the frame rate, lowering it. For example, if we lower our frame rate here to 5 frames per second, look how much the CPU usage dropped. So that's one way to get more horsepower. If you have an older computer that's having trouble keeping up with RSpec, here's another trick. Set the rotate box over here to 0. Now that means you'll have to manually do your rotation with your diffraction grating, but look at the CPU usage. It dropped considerably because we're not doing any rotating. This should only be necessary on older computers that are having trouble keeping up with your frame rate. Over here under Live Camera, if you're recording your live camera, the frame rate on this button will also be applied to the saved video. This can mean that saved videos are considerably smaller than they would have been in the past.